Hello, welcome to Wet Blanket, home of bad audio and even worse takes. Today I wanted to do a video on a series that's been near and dear to my heart for years. If you've watched my 2020 retrospective or cringe culture video, you already know this show from me mentioning it in passing. One of my favorite shows of all time and long-standing special interest is Beyblade Metal Fight, or Beyblade Metal Saga. This show spans through 4 seasons and 1 movie that was only released in Japan. You've got Beyblade Metal Fusion, Beyblade Metal Masters, Metal Fury, and Shogun Steel. I can't lift this finger without... I don't know. Anyway, like I said, this show is something I've been a fan of since I was 10 years old. Up until recently, I've always been afraid to tell other people that it's something I'm into. That's because unlike other kids shows in a similar vein like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh!, this show doesn't really have much of an adult audience. But I kind of figured, what the heck, cringe culture is dead, and there are people that watch things for much younger kids like Bluey, and I have no problem with people watching Bluey. 2025 is the year where we are comforting ourselves and taking care of ourselves. If that means you watch a couple of kids shows, that means you watch a couple of kids shows. And my kids show of choice is Beyblade Metal Fight. Without spoiling too much, I do want to give everybody watching this video a couple reasons why I think that they should watch the show. Though I will have a warning here for spoilers ahead. There are spoilers because I can't convince people to watch the show without talking about the plot at least a little bit. It's just not in my nature. I've taken this video 3 times and I always yap too much in every take, so let's see number whatever this is. Anyway, if you want a TLDR of why you should watch this series, I'm gonna read off a short list of the different themes that you will find through these 4 seasons. Cult activity, brainwashing, electroshock therapy, with some getting addicted to the electroshock therapy, childhood terminal illness and medical malpractice, feelings of rejection and mediocrity, loss of bodily autonomy, PTSD, parental abandonment, bullying, mistrust of authority, and so much more. Yes, although this show is TVY7, its themes sometimes are not. I'm just going to be honest. But it is something that you have to read into. But as you know, I am the English teacher of media consumption, and I read too much into absolutely everything. Anyway, and without further ado, I'm going to point out some highlights of what I really like about the show and reasons why I think you should watch it, and maybe one person will. I'm Wet Blanket, and on this channel, I talk about things that I don't feel get enough attention in the commentary community, so let's start a conversation. Something that I mentioned in my video about why Sonic is still popular is that I love a good series with a cast of colorful characters. This is why Undertale is my favorite game of all time. I was really into My Hero Academia when it first came out. Obviously, it's why I love Sonic the Hedgehog. I just love a cast of fun, dynamic characters, even if they're a little tropey at times. We love a good trope. We love a good well-done trope. Not only are the main characters extremely colorful and dynamic, but we also get a lot of fun side characters as well. The main character is a headstrong mix between Sonic the Hedgehog and Ash Ketchum. He is a 15-year-old nomad who travels the world in search of being the best blader in the whole world. You know, kind of like how Ash wants to be champion, Jinga wants to be the world's #1 blader. And much like Ash's deep affection for his Pokemon, Jinga also has a deep connection with what he calls blader spirit, which is determination. So Jinga's a bit of a loose cannon with a lot of impulse control, but that's balanced out really nicely with one of his female companions, Madoka. Now, Madoka is kind of like Misty in the terms of like she's the only girl and she's the brains behind the operation, but she's different from Misty in terms of the fact that she actually doesn't fight. She doesn't get her usefulness from fighting, she gets her usefulness from being a support. By that I mean she knows everything about Beyblade repair that there is to know. She runs a shop with her father, and even taught the entire main cast about things they didn't even know about, like types and changing parts and Beyblade maintenance. So yes, she's a very important part of the cast because without her, I mean, there wouldn't even be Beyblades anymore past a certain point. Besides her is the green-haired little kid Kenta. Kenta's rocking the reverse Kara fit, and he looks up to Jinga like an older brother, wants to be just like him, and is essentially his protege. Throughout the course of the show, we get to see him morph from a small, soft-spoken, whiny child to honestly an absolute unit. The next character, he's my favorite. Benkei Hanawa is an ex-delinquent. He used to be a member of a gang called the Face Hunters, which is essentially a gang of bullies who targets younger bladers, takes all of their points, and essentially leaves them for dead. Not actually for dead. That comes later. He's the second in command of the Face Hunters. He shows himself to be a huge antagonist at first, but then they realize that he actually has a very good heart because he saves Madoka from getting crabs. But yeah, he's just a tough guy that works really hard and loves his friends, is fiercely loyal. Honestly, the only reason he was a delinquent in the first place is because of his very best friend, or very best one-sided relationship, Kyoya. Kyoya used to be my favorite when I was a kid. I can't stand this guy now, to be completely honest with you. So if you know me, you know I love Shadow the Hedgehog, but I don't just love Shadow the Hedgehog because he's a Hot Topic wannabe. I love him because he's a Hot Topic wannabe with lore. Kyoya is all of the bad, annoying edginess of Shadow the Hedgehog with no substance behind it. Honestly, I would say Kyoya is a perfect villain, but he's not a villain. We're supposed to like him. He is the leader of the Face Hunters, but ends up leaving his gang high and dry. Ends up leaving his gang high and dry in order to pursue Jinga in order to try to beat him, because he lost once and was mad about it. Because of this, he's kind of like the edgy lone wolf character, even though his Beyblade is Rock Leone, very obviously a lion. Benkei is somebody who's absolutely sworn to the sword and would give his life for this man, and he doesn't really care about him at all in return. All he cares about is beating Jinga, and he keeps tabs on him, and he knows where he's at all times, and like Loki stalks the guy. And honestly, I feel like there might be some undertones behind that. I don't know, doesn't seem very straight and narrow to me. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's the main set, that's the main 5 people that we meet within the first couple of episodes, and besides that, we get a lot of other cool characters. Obviously, with protagonists, we have antagonists. The antagonist in this show is a multi-million-dollar company. More specifically, the Dark Nebula and Hades Incorporated. Doji and his computer wife Karen are the her name is Mercy, are the big heads of the organization, and their protege is young Ryuga, who is the same age as Jinga, around 15. Obviously, they were made to be foils. We're gonna get more into Ryuga later, but just know for now that he was a 15-year-old that was gifted all of the power in the universe, all of the power being in the form of a Beyblade named El Drago. Along the Dark Nebula side, we also have Secret Agent Tsubasa. Tsubasa actually works for the WBBA, which is the big Beyblade Bureau. The Beyblade Bureau business blaze. Pretty much they're the people that, I mean, it's kind of like the NBA, right? The NBA is the big company that sets up all of the professional basketball stuff. That's what the WBBA is to Beyblade. So he is an undercover agent for the WBBA because the WBBA thinks that Dark Nebula is up to some dark shit. I mean, they really didn't do a good job at hiding it with the name. Anyway, Tsubasa's Beyblade is Eagle, and he's actually more akin to Shadow the Hedgehog than our friend Kyoya because he actually has substance behind his mysterious nature. His silent, calculated, subdued disposition is in perfect contrast to the boy he is stuck with for a huge part of the series. See, the Dark Nebula pairs him up with Yu Tendo. Yu Tendo is another like 10-year-old kid, kind of like Kenta's age, and he's literally just Bowser Jr. If you want to know what Yu Tendo's personality is, it's Bowser Jr. Stay with me. If Kenta is Morty from Rick and Morty, then Yu Tendo is Bowser Jr. You know, he is just this brat. He is really good at what he does, and he knows it. He doesn't like you if he doesn't think that you're cool, and his favorite person in the entire world is antagonist Ryuga. And he hates Tsubasa because Tsubasa is a big fat stick in the mud. Along the way, they meet other Beybladers like the male ballerina Teru with Earth Virgo, the sharpshooting kid with a sucker always in his mouth named Captain Capri. By the way, I thought that sucker motif, which is obviously supposed to simulate a cigarette, I thought it was so cool as a kid, and I tried to do it too as my little aesthetic. Cavities. Anyway, you also have the fortune-telling traditional Beyblader Ryutaro, you have the creepy snake dude, Reggie, and you have the twins as well. Their names are slipping my mind. I used to think the twins were so cool too. They're in one episode. They're only in one. Each Beyblader has their own personality crafted around their Beyblade and the way that they like to battle. In this show, it's very apparent that your Beyblade is a reflection of who you are, which actually leads itself pretty well to the battle mechanics. See, the battle mechanics are very similar to Yu-Gi-Oh!, in which the Beyblades are spinning in the stadium, but they're also like giant holographic. For example, when Leon is spinning, it's a giant holographic lion fighting whoever is the other giant holographic whatever. No, the Beyblades are very obviously magic. And that also means that some Beybladers, like Reggie, the snake guy, can use their Beyblades to physically harm not just the other spinning top, but the spinning top's owner. One of the scariest things that I saw from Beyblade when I was a kid is when this snake dude paralyzed his opponent. Paralyzed from the neck down. That was they could not move. That almost scared me as much as the bloodbending episode of Avatar. That was crazy. Anyway, with our cast highlighted and the battle mechanics highlighted, I want to get into some plot points that I really like that are more specific. Again, not to spoil the entire thing, but to just give some context on what this story can provide. One of the biggest things that we get to see in Beyblade that we don't really get to see in Pokemon is where Jenga's parents are. Jenga was raised by a single father because his mother died. The mom really got the Walt Disney treatment. I mean, come on. But the mom died and Jenga was raised by a single father in a small remote village. One day, Jenga's father went out to try to stop El Drago from getting into the hands of the wrong person. He knew which mountain to find the Beyblade. The Beyblade was created by a star fragment, placed in a mountain, whatever. Anyway, he knew where it was. So he was going to grab it so that it didn't fall into the wrong hands. Jenga, a small naive child, decides to follow his father without his father knowing. Jenga then watches his father die right in front of him. Or at least he thinks. After that, Jenga is an orphan and is like, hey, I'm already an orphan, might as well see what this world has to offer, and starts traveling the world. Little did Jenga know his father did not die that day. And he actually comes back with the milk later in the series. Jenga has no idea why his dad left. Because again, Jenga thought his dad died. He didn't die, he just left. That's insane for a kid's show. The other thing I want to talk about is just how twisted these villains are. Back to the character of Ryuga, the main antagonist with El Drago. He is actually nothing but a vessel for chaos. And let me explain what that means. So, in Ryuga's mind, he got this forbidden Beyblade from Doji with the help of the Dark Nebula in order for him to become the most powerful blader in the world. Because I guess they ran a bunch of genetic tests or whatever, and he was the only one that was like genetically capable of handling it. I have no idea how that works. Anyway, Ryuga gets El Drago from the same mountain that Jenga's dad just died in, and he is under the impression that he is going to be the most powerful person in the entire world. Well, does he know that that's not exactly true? It is, but it isn't. So how El Drago works is it sucks the power out of the Beyblades that are battling it. When it defeats the Beyblade, it has one of two options. One, move on, or two, sap all of the energy remaining out of the Beyblade and its owner. You see this happen to 3 different characters in the show. El Drago will essentially take over this person's body, seep all of their energy, and then put them into a permanent coma. Like, I think that if this show wasn't TVY7, it would be, like, dying. Because this show is for kids, it is a demonically induced coma that they will stay in for the rest of their days until somebody at the hospital decides to pull the plug. What Ryuga doesn't know is that as he is seeping energy into his Beyblade, he is also losing his own bodily autonomy. The Beyblade is also seeping energy from him. The stronger the Beyblade gets, the more it starts to control his body. Until by the end of the show, he doesn't have any autonomy left. The Beyblade essentially is a parasite that takes over his mind. And that was all the plan of the Dark Nebula. Things get even more messed up when you get to the 2nd season and realize that Doji is a fall guy for a larger corporation called Hades, and their head honcho, Dr. Ziggurat. But before I get into that, I want to talk about one of the things that really stuck with me at the beginning of the 2nd season. So obviously at the end of the 1st season, the good guy saves the day. All of the characters wake up from their comas. They have their energy, their spirits back. However, some of them still suffer the effects of being brutally zapped of their life force. I think they call it dragon disease.
More like Dragon D's, am I right, guys?
I don't know. But anyway, it's another word for post-traumatic stress disorder. And one of the most harrowing scenes to me is when the agent Tsubasa that I was talking about earlier gets into a battle with another person at the beginning of the 2nd season, and then he starts to have a PTSD episode. And you can see everything. So yeah, not only did this show for children put forth life-altering consequences for the holders of the Beyblade, But there was also aftermath. It caused some bladers to give up on Beyblading entirely because the episodes were so bad, and it caused some people to just become more power thirsty as well. Another thing I want to talk about is electroshock therapy. So in Beyblade Metal Masters, the second season, they call this an arrangement, which is essentially you take Joe Schmo off the street, you put him into a glass capsule, put an electric rod cap on his head, and zap him of all of his personality and memories until he is at a complete amnesia 0. He is nobody. And then you go back in with the tendrils in the cap and you put a new personality into him. Danganronpa V3 style. From that, you get really interesting side characters like Jack, the tortured artist, who didn't even draw, paint, or anything in his life before the arrangement. Essentially, Dr. Ziggurat was making new people, and the first person he tested this technology on was a terminally ill child. I'm not gonna get into the whole story of Toby because that is like absolutely heart-wrenching, and I really need you to watch the show for it, but just know that he somehow got his hands on a terminally ill child and then turned him into Rei from Neon Genesis Evangelion. They really kirigiri'd him. I will also say though, there is that sinister plot, but there is also a really cool subplot of the World Championships of Beyblade. You get things like different Beyblade teams from all around the world. You get things like Benkei in a luchador costume. You get things like Ryuga Part 2. So the whole point of Ryuga being stripped of all of his autonomy and being turned into a being of chaos is so that Dr. Ziggurat could get a hold of him, give him an arrangement, and turn him into a puppet for Hades Incorporated. They were going to do the same thing to him that they did to Toby, which is why they tested it on Toby first. Absolute crazy. Like, the reason why I love Beyblade so much is that, unlike Pokemon, you're not just dealing with concepts, you're not just dealing with world domination, you're dealing with lives. That leads us into Metal Fury, where Kyoya gets to wear a super cool crop top, even though he's still super annoying. If you dress well, you dress well. I gotta give credit where credit's due. And you get the Catgirl cult. You get the Catgirl cult. That's all I'm gonna say on why I love the Beyblade series, because again, I really want you to watch it. I'm not trying to give away all of the secrets. There are characters that are trying to avenge their actually dead parents. There are characters who feel that they have nothing to live for. There are characters who must turn to evil in order to protect their family. There's a war between two dojos. Seriously, you need to watch this show if you haven't before. If anything, it's a nice little show to put in the background while you're doing something else. It's a really good show. I highly recommend. There are a couple of black eyes in the show that I do want to talk about. Obviously, the show talks about a lot of childish things, but again, this is a show aimed at children, so if you can get past a little bit of the cringe, it's a really good watch. Another thing that I absolutely hate that I won't get into today is how they did my boy Benkei so wrong. But anyway, yeah, at the end of the day, Beyblade has been my comfort show for a very long time, and hopefully it can be yours too. Thanks for watching.